Hey folks, Sebastian from Magical here. Today we're going to do a little bit of level design together. It's been a while since we did any level design on video. Let's do one more. And today we're going to look at something that I've been struggling with for a really long time, and I still feel like I haven't quite figured it out, but I'm getting closer. And that is foliage and grass. And so you can see this is the normal level that we're usually spending time in, and one new addition to this area is grass, which you can see here. And foliage and grass is essentially, for a while now, it has been the sort of last remaining large visual element missing from this level. And the reason for that is that I haven't quite figured out how to do that, and I still feel like this may not be the best way to do it, but I think I just have to settle on something and go with it. So this is the current version, how it looks. You can see grass in various places of this area. It's not super visible from the distance. Except in some places where it's sort of flickering a little bit, which we'll get to in a bit. But the idea is kind of that it's supposed to sort of melt into the background and then only be visible when you're up front or up close. And I think it pulls that off pretty well in most cases. So it doesn't cover the whole area, and that has never really been the idea. Instead, you find it in these sort of like patches, some of which are a bit denser and some of which are a bit sparser. And if we look at the scale here, we have like a person here. You can see that these grass tufts here. Let's actually turn off the selection boxes. The grass tufts here are actually they're quite tall, like they're, I don't know, maybe like 30-40 centimeters or something. Or half a meter perhaps, and so these are really like the longer grass, essentially. Like this whole area is very green, so the idea here is that like even this place is clearly this is grass, but the sort of geometric grass, if you will, are these sort of taller patches, and I think this works pretty well. So what I mentioned that I've been sort of struggling with this for a little while, and so why is that? Well, I haven't really figured out how to render grass nicely, and one thing that you can still clearly see here when I'm moving the camera is that it's sort of flickering a little bit, and I've actually spent the past week or so working on this grass, and a significant portion of that has actually gone into like reducing flickering. It has flickered a lot more than it's doing right now, but it's still flickering too much in my opinion, and so that's a bit unfortunate. But it's sort of a byproduct of how I'm rendering these guys. It can be solved with a better anti-aliasing solution, something like temporal anti-aliasing, or maybe even MSAA, multi-sampling anti-aliasing. It can make it look a lot nicer, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe I'll implement temporal anti-aliasing at some point. Right now we're using SMAA. And we have FXAA as a sort of fallback, and you can see that without any kind of AA, this just flickers a lot more. Like watch this area here, for example, as I'm moving the camera slowly back, like it flickers like crazy. And SMAA makes that a little more tolerable, but it's still like it's a little annoying. it would be nice to really solve this once and for all in a nicer way. We have the same problem here with this handrail here, where like if you move far enough from it, it just becomes this weird blur. Like if I move the camera just a little bit, you can see it sort of flickers like crazy. And this is because of really thin geometry, and the fact that as we're rasterizing these very thin objects, they sort of occupy 1 pixel, and then they can sort of jump between 1 pixel and the next pixel, and you kind of need to do like sub-pixel blending at that level, and we're not really doing that. So one thing that I'm doing for the power lines actually is I have a custom renderer, which we can look at in a second. But there's one reason why I have these yellow lines here. The renderer is not used in the editor; it's only used in the game, and it's like a special thing that's meant to reduce flickering for power lines. But it can't really be used with grass that easily. So right, how does the grass actually work? Well, you can sort of see if we move so that we're looking at one of these tufts from above, you can sort of see that it's just 3 planes like this put together with a hand-drawn grass texture. So if we look at grass, let's see, which one is it? I think it's this one. So it's a little difficult to see here when it's white on gray, but this is the texture that's used for all the grass currently in the level. So I just hand drew a few of these tufts, and if we go here, we can look at the Blender file for them, which should make it very, very easy to see. Like here we have the different kinds of tufts, and they're really just these planes put together like this. And so that's kind of part of the system. Then we need to light them somehow. That's where the next problem comes in. So how do we actually light and color these guys? And how do we make them sort of sway like this a little bit? So a problem with using geometry like this is obviously that the normals are just sort of, they're pointing one way, but we're actually using double-sided planes here, so we can't just use the normals directly. So you have to essentially kind of fake world space normals. Let's see if we can just rotate this. You can see that as we rotate it down, all the grass becomes black because it's the normals are just pointing away from the sun, and the sun being over there. So as we rotate it towards the sun, it becomes like brightest because the normals are just faked so that they always point upwards. And that means that it can be a little tricky to get grass to look sort of as if it was sitting in the scene next to an object that has like actual normals, such as these rocks here that have like proper normals. They can be a little tricky to select, like these guys. You can just turn them any way and they will look correct. So then what do we do? Well, I have a shader set up, which we can look at. Let's see if we actually it's probably this one, isn't it? I'll just explore to that, and oh, I probably need to open it this way. I'm using a new computer. It's not really a new computer, but it's a recently installed computer. So I don't have all the file associations set up correctly. So here we have the pixel shader for the grass. Actually, we can look at the vertex first, and here we can see like the faked upwards facing normal is just 0, 1, 0, which is upwards. And what we do after that is that we get something called the terrain map color Uvs. So when you have the terrain in the level like this, and it's sort of it's this massive. Let's turn off the fog for a bit. There's the fog. It's this massive height map that's faced like this. We actually have a texture that is sort of rendered. You can sample if you want any object to assume the color of the terrain, and so we use that in the grass in the grass material, and we get the terrain color map, which is a system texture, and we multiply that with something called the wind strength. The wind strength is just baked into the vertex data, and it's essentially just a value that goes from 0 to 1. So if you look at this, if you have a vertex here and you have a vertex here, this one will have 1 in wind strength, and this one will have 0. So it goes sort of increases upwards. Now there's nothing in between, but if there was a vertex here, it would have 0.5. But that's the idea. It's a vertex color essentially in Blender terms, but we use it as the wind strength, and that means that we have this animation here. Actually, the bottom one is probably not exactly 0, but it's something close to 0 because it kind of sways a little bit. But the top one is significantly larger, and that's why the tops sort of sway more than the bottom ones. And like I mentioned, we multiply the wind strength with the color as well, and that way we get this kind of nice sort of gradient, which can be a little tricky to see sometimes. But the grass becomes brighter towards the top and darker towards the bottom, and visible sometimes, and you can see it pretty well on this one here. Like it kind of fades into the background like it's actually supposed to do, but there's a slight gradient from darker and then to brighter up here. And yes, like I mentioned, it actually uses the terrain color, which means that if we do something like paint like mud here, for example. Actually, that is pretty muddy already. Let's take a very green place here where we have green grass. If we paint this muddy, you can see that the grass actually changes color as well. So if we redo and undo it a few times, you can see the grass changing color. And that way we can get it to sit on the terrain pretty nicely. Like here's a pretty good example where I have these slightly darker spots on the grass, and the grass sort of gets this darker shade from that as well. So this was a pretty big sort of almost like breakthrough for me, which also means that I don't have to like have many different kinds and colors of grass. I can just use one, and it will sort of sit on whatever piece of terrain it is placed on. So that's pretty nice. And then on the pixel shader side, we don't do anything super crazy. We essentially just take the color, the terrain color, It's actually supposed to be not width strength, but wind strength. Like that. And then we have this very important thing here where we clip the pixel. Like if we don't do this, I can just show you what happens if we don't clip the pixel. We get something. You get the grass, and it is colored correctly, but you get these essentially the transparent parts as well of the mesh, which is not what you want. So how does the clipping work? Well, we sample the texture. So this is the actual grass tuft texture, and we look at the alpha, which is in W, and we have this clip parameter here, which is just set to 0.5 currently. And so if the alpha is less than 0.5, we just clip it. Otherwise, we let it through. That's essentially what that means. Like so. And you can play around with the values of like how at which level you want to clip them, etc., etc., and you get slightly different looking grass from that. So that gives us this, and then there's one final piece to actually lighting this thing, and that is light probes. So if you remember from the GI video that I did previously, we had two forms of indirect or global lighting. We have light maps, which we can toggle on and off like this, and it affects like large scale things like the terrain and the cliffs and buildings and stuff like that. And then we have light probes, which we can actually visualize. It's these objects here. They work very similarly to like a light probe in Unity or something, and they form this big huge mess, which is the light probe mesh, and the lighting is then sort of interpolated between those. And the light probes are very important in lighting the grass. Like if we turn them on and off, you can see that it affects other things as well. But for example, this grass here under this rock, which is kind of dark, it looks way too bright without light probes. But when we turn it on, it like fits and sits much nicer into the terrain. So this grass here is exactly the same grass as here, even though they are sort of very, very different colored things. So I think this works. This is the grass variant that I'm going to go with. So I have another future idea that I would like to explore at some point, which would be like the areas that aren't covered, like hand-placed grass currently. So this place here, for example, the system could sort of place automatically some small, very, very sort of short grass tufts or something to just sort of fill up make the silhouette of the ground a little interesting, perhaps, and it would sort of dynamically place those as the camera moves around. But I haven't done that yet. Let's see if I get to implementing that as well. Let's put the fog back on. Okay, so let's have a look at the areas that are currently covered in grass, and it's maybe a little less than half the level for now. Oh, by the way, we have a new mesh. At this display. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, we have this orange thing here, which was kind of supposed to be This is supposed to be like a piece of that ship that they have sort of brought down. It's the ship is kind of in geostatic orbit over the planet, and things are falling off, as you can see, kind of coming off it. And all of these transport stations are aimed at that ship, the big one over there as well. And so there's been this orange piece here that I finally took some time and actually model it properly. So it's not textured yet, as you can see. Just finished modeling it a few days ago. So this is new, and it was quite fun to model. And yeah, I think otherwise this place is mostly as you've seen it before, except for the grass. And here we can actually let's see if we can get that a little bigger so that I can get this filter box to show. So let's search for grass, and we have a few things. I've tried some things in the past, but the ones that we are interested in now are things like this. So let's copy the full name, and it's Rocky Forest Grass Patch 1. So let's take like a piece of this. So why won't you let me actually copy? Let's do that. And I'm not sure if I've actually showed you the JQ editor before. This is a sort of like a query language editor where you can ask the editor, hey, give me all of the objects that have these properties, or select all the objects that have this name, or whatever, or count how many objects I have that are. I wrote a blog post about this system. It's extremely handy to have, and I can put that in the description below. So if we want to select all the grass currently, I have some examples here that we can just take. So JQ is not something that I've made myself. It's actually like a JSON processor. So we have like a function here, or macro, or whatever you want to call it, to get all the game objects. Then select the ones where the name contains Rocky Forest Grass. So that would be like grass patch 1, 2, 3, and we have some alternative ones as well. If I can get the alternative. The coloring is slightly different on the alternative ones. And we don't want to print them, we want to select the objects, so we can just let that run, and it takes a little while, and want the selection boxes. That didn't actually return anything. Why did it not? Empty list of objects. Oh, that's interesting. Let's select one of these guys and see. Oh, right. Yeah, it's not the name actually, right? It's the type. So so we can do. Let me have a look. We can do type, and then we can just do Rocky Forest and grass, and you can save and load these things if you just want to like copy them quickly. And there we go. Right, so we have 5,200 of them currently in the level, and here we can see where I have actually placed grass currently. And in the editor, these are actual game objects. So yeah, you can just take any one of these and like move them around, etc., etc. But in the game, they aren't. They get exported into something called a decoration, which is a much lighter weight system, which has some limitations currently. I might want to improve on, but still. So this is where we have currently added grass in this part of the level. So it's mostly like these plains here that we already looked at. Then I've done a little bit here close to the dropship wreck, and we should probably continue in this direction to sort of fill out this whole starting area, and then finally move on to the base. A pretty good plan. Alright, so before we start actually painting, just a quick word about some other foliage types that I have. Technically you can make anything into a decoration. You can make a building with decorations, for example, or as a decoration, and then you can paint it as a decoration. That doesn't really make a lot of sense, because decorations currently don't have collisions, for example. But you can if you want to. So if we quickly launch the game and have a look at let's see if I can actually where's the mixer? There's the mixer. Let's just not that one, this one. Let's bring it down. And we can just fly to this place here. So if we turn off the decorations, currently render decorations, you can see that we have other things besides the grass. Like the grass, yes, over here goes away, but also these rocks, these smaller rocks are decorations as well, and these ferns are decorations, and we have these kinds of plants as well, also decorations. So you can essentially make anything into a decoration, and the good thing about decorations is that they're fairly lightweight. Like we can render 5,000 of these grass objects in the game without breaking a sweat, but they're actually fairly heavy in the editor when each of them can be referred to and moved around, and etc. etc. And if we just plonk down a car here, for example, and use it to demonstrate here, one thing that I would like to do is when you drive on these things, they would be sort of flattened. Currently they don't do that, and here is also an example of, like, this is something that I might have to actually improve a little bit, because these rocks now don't have any collision, which is a little silly, especially when this rock, which is not a decoration, actually has collisions. So it's a little inconsistent. But yes, about the flattening, I should be able to actually use the tire track map for that. So as you can see, the car leaves tire tracks around. Let's just make that sleep so that we can actually get a slightly better frame rate here. Frame rate is chugging a bit. Yeah, this machine is a little slower than my usual one. So we should be able to actually just sample the tire track map and make the grass and whatever other object we want to be sort of flattened to the ground as we drive over them. Like the rocks obviously shouldn't, but the rocks should probably have collisions as well. So, but yeah, that's something to put in at a later date. Right. So I tend to put these grassy areas in places where the player is not expected to like drive the most. So like right directly on a road, for example, it's probably best to leave it without grass. There's also a place where like there's a little bit of grass around here, but this area is mostly without grass because it's kind of expected that the player would drive here. But then we have this slight patch of grass here, for example, and also around here somewhere there's a patch of grass. So that tends to look best. And also this kind of grass that I'm now using tends to look best when it's like you have more than just like a few blades of grass. Like this is, I'd say this amount here is like the minimum. So if you want to put down grass, you should probably put down more than just a few tufts. It just tends to look really bad if you don't do that. Yeah. So let's try to keep these things in mind when we start painting. I was thinking maybe we should. I started painting grass here in this ravine here, and maybe we should continue with it, and it will be joined with this area up here, which already has a little bit of grass. So that would be essentially this area here on this side of the bridge. So currently it looks very sort of very flat and uninteresting when there's no foliage or anything anywhere. And then when you move up here and move to somewhere here, it looks more interesting. Even just the fact that the shadow here of this thruster clearly has like the grass is sort of reflected in these. The fact that there is something here, it just looks nicer and more interesting. Yeah, that's actually one thing. The grass doesn't currently cast shadows, but it receives shadows. So I have this plant here, for example. This plant does cast shadows, as you can see if we scale it up enough and move it around. You can see it even when it's at its correct size. But the grass currently doesn't do it. Same thing with this fern. The fern also casts shadows. I don't have the grass casting shadows, but it receives shadows from other objects. That seems to be like the most sensible way of doing this. We have so many blades of grass that it might actually be with the current system, it might be a performance problem if they were to cast shadows, and I don't think it would look that good anyway. So I don't have that. All right, so how do we actually paint these things then? We have this thing called a decoration paint tool here. And it has a layer name, so we have foliage decorations, ground decorations, and background decorations, and you can just put anything here if you want to, but these are the sort of standard decoration layers, and you can see them all here. Foliage, ground, and background. I don't think there's. Oh, there is something in the background actually. I'm not sure those should actually be there. Should probably be. Yeah, that should be foliage. Let's just fix this up as we go. What about plant? What is that? That's a plant, and that's a fern. And that's a grass patch. Yeah, they should all just be in the foliage actually. So that was silly, but it's fixed now. So we have background, which is currently empty. But we also have ground decorations. So these tend to be the rocks we talked about. And there are quite many of them, as you can see, and there might even be more. And what is this? Yeah, you can see that I've sort of painted these on the wrong layer, which doesn't really matter, except that I tend to try to actually keep these things organized. So what we can do is we have the foliage decoration layer there, so we can do activate current decoration paint layer. So foliage decorations is active, and move select objects to active layer. It complains that the names are already in use. It doesn't matter. And now if we take ground decorations and select all the objects, we should only get these rocks. And again, this is the thing. This is not actually a decoration. It just happens to be about the same size as that. It's a bit silly. But yes, so these are all decorations. These are sort of lighter weight objects at runtime. And I have this kind of, if we move away, they sort of get they get dissolved, as it's called. Like if you watch this rock here, that one, it sort of disappears into thin air, and then it kind of materializes when trick that you can do. And you can see it clearly with these decorations here as well. So that's that, and then we have the foliage decorations, and yes, we can also select all the objects like this, and we have even more than just the grass, because now we also have the well, why aren't you? Oh, this is a grass test. Yeah, I'm gonna have to probably. I can probably just move these over to the active layer as well. There we go. And now it's on the decoration layer. Yeah, like I've said, I've actually worked quite a bit with this foliage thing lately, so there's been some tests. And an interesting thing to note here is that these don't have this lightning bolt, and that means that the layers are not automatically loaded. Which, like, if you had any actual game objects on those levels, you wouldn't actually get those objects into the game unless you specifically loaded these levels, these layers. And that's because we don't actually have these objects as objects at the runtime. Like I mentioned, they get turned into decorations. And so we have this decoration paint tool. I typically just crank this density up to 5, because at least with grass, that's essentially what you need. And we have a paint decorations tool here. So we can select something. Select like we don't have any favorites yet. Probably need to add these to the favorites, because not that. Again, new machine. And I might want some ferns as well, so I can add some of these ferns. Not those. I don't think those are kind of special cases. Oh, no, not that. This one. All right. So when you select an object like this, you can just start painting, and it will paint them in the area that you selected. Don't worry about those. The paint tool is kind of crappy like that. It spams those warnings, and you can also just plonk it directly if you hold down Shift if you want a specific object somewhere. And so how is this different from just placing objects normally? Well, the objects have some decoration properties. So if we go to Rocky Forest, for example, that one, and we look at the plant, it has this decoration object component, and has some like min scale, max scale, and paint radiuses. Defines like how much distance between the objects there needs to be, and then how much the scale can differ, and then how much it actually aligns with the terrain. So if you want an object that like goes kind of straight out from like a sloped angle like this, then you would put that to 1, and if you want it to always be straight up, you would put it to 0, and then anything in between is in between that. So these tend to like be like a little bit aligned with the terrain, which makes it look more natural like that. Right, so let's get rid of those, and we can actually start painting properly. So where is the last grass area? It's around here. You don't want to put too much of it. The performance typically holds up pretty well, but we don't want to fill the entire level with grass. And if you paint it very densely in one area, then we're gonna want to actually fill with the same density in all areas, and I don't think we can really cope with that currently, and I don't think that will look good either. So you want to sort of emphasize that the grass tufts are really just like the very tall areas, the areas where there's tall grass. By the way, if you hear some weird noises in the background, that's my AC unit keeping this room livable. It's scorching hot outside on this beautiful June day. Okay, so let's do a little bit of painting, shall we? And we can start just by plonking down a few of these. And the foliage painting tool also like rotates them randomly, so that you don't get the sort of repeating pattern, which you can do with the normal placement tool as well, but the foliage painting tool always does that. Something like this maybe, and these vehicles are slightly annoying there when I don't want to mess with them right now. Have these sort of tall tufts. They tend to look very good if you have just like a few of them, not too many, and have them in slightly sort of surprising places, perhaps. So something like that, and sometimes the grass, it just looks very bad and bland without some other things to sort of help it out. I'm gonna scale down some of these. There's like a scale down tool for, you can scale down these because those are decorations as well. You typically want to scale down the outermost ones a little bit. Something like this, and I made like almost like a path here of the grass, which tends to be a pretty good way of placing these. Like don't put them just sort of willy-nilly down, just like actually paint some like paths for the grass to actually grow. So here, for example, put down like some rocks or something like this and like that, and that might make it look like they belong a little better. And as you can see, even though I'm painting like decorations, you can just use the normal transform tools with them, and we can even perhaps just color this a little bit. That might make it look more natural as well. Something like this, and you just sort of fool around a little bit until you get something that looks natural, while of course keeping these things that we talked about in mind. And yeah, it's not the most beautiful grass ever. I fully acknowledge that. I think it looks really nice in some places. Like I think here, for example, it looks very nice, and it feels like a natural place. This one here as well looks pretty nice. But in some places, it's kind of tricky to get it to look natural. And I will probably need to also add a few more different types of foliage types. Like we have these plants here, we have the ferns, we also have some other ones, but they're very old, and I don't really fit in with the rest of the look now. We have something like this, for example. I think that it doesn't look bad, but the colors aren't really, they don't really fit in with the rest of the visuals. So I'm gonna have to at least like recolor them a little bit if I decided to go with that. All right. So let's keep going a little bit. What is happening with my filtering here? Oh, that it just happened to be collapsed. Right, so we can put this into, I think, list form instead, and start painting here as well. And we have these alternate ones. So what I typically do is I sort of fill an area roughly, and some of these can actually come out onto the road. Might want to scale it down a little bit, but it can still sort of be one of those tufts that have sort of tried to cross the road almost, but then just kind of dried up. But yes, I tend to use like one of these to almost like fill the area with grass, and then I go and take the alternate one and I sort of almost like paint like this road here, and it uses a slightly different color. And again, if you don't paint it randomly, it tends to look quite alright. If you paint it randomly, it just looks like noise. So don't do that. That's a little too steep. Just make them a little smaller around the edges, and then maybe scale them up in the middle a little bit. Maybe. And then do like one area here where it's sort of continues from the same patch outwards a little bit, but not too far. And make these sort of contiguous or semi-contiguous areas. They tend to look more natural than just placing them down, sort of filling an area just sort of mechanically. That just looks like you know, Perlin noise or something. And that's not really how grass grows in the real life. So we can put in like a rock or something here as well, and then just maybe a little smaller, and then we can even ever so slightly dig a hole. Something like that. That tends to look pretty good. Yeah, so I have this option here where you can only select the objects on the active layer, and that's very handy, because then I can just go like this, and I can, you know, scale it up or do whatever I want without accidentally selecting any of these other ones. But if I hold down Alt, I can select any of them, and of course this object here goes to the ground decoration, so that's why it won't get accidentally selected when I do that. All right. All right. Are we good? Are we good? Do we need something more? Maybe one more plant somewhere. And we can, of course, put down a fern as well. I'm pretty sure I'm not placing ferns like where they would actually grow. But whatever, as long as it looks good, I'm happy. And it's not supposed to be earth anyway, so it doesn't matter. And yeah, if you have any sort of non-grass foliage like this, then rocks are your best friend. Like put them next to rocks, and it tends to look all right. Like this. They form sort of an ensemble, if you will, and it looks kind of natural like this. This is like, yeah, that's probably where they would grow. I can buy that. Of course, you have these things that are sort of out on a meadow or something, and that's fine. But if you have anything slightly larger, then just put them next to some other object, rather than right in the middle of nothing. Of course, there should be exceptions to every rule. You should do that as well, but I find that they look better when they have a body next to them. Where then? And you also don't want to like let's see if we can do blah 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 blah. So this is perhaps getting a little sort of, you can see the pattern here, that okay, we have one there, and there's a little bit of free space, then we have another there, then we have another there. So we should probably just break up that pattern a little bit, maybe by painting on this side. And I think this place here with these rocks and these trees, they should work pretty well with a little bit of foliage. So again, let's start with some of these. Plonk down a little bit of it, not that much. And sometimes you paint, you have an area and you paint a little bit of grass on it, and then you don't really think it looks all that great, and then you just color the ground a little differently, and it just works very well. That can also happen. Just put some of this here. Yeah, they're a little more brown. The alternate ones. They also sample the terrain texture, but they're a little more brown. They have like a color modulation. So you can do it the other way around when you're actually using this one and then doing like one or two of these regular ones there instead. Right, so I can't really use the scaling here because I don't want to scale the rocks necessarily. So let's just scale these using the normal means. And you also need to be careful when you're placing grass tufts. On slopes, like if we have a grass patch, I will put it there. For example, if we scale it out, it will inevitably do this. It will sort of start hovering in the air. So we need to be careful with that, or alternatively get sort of buried, sort of too deep, if you will. So that's not great either. Yeah, these are sometimes a little tricky to select. I've been thinking about how to actually solve this problem, and I think I want to implement something where, well, actually, yeah, you can see the thing I was mentioning a second ago right there. Yeah, I think I want to do something like where you're actually, if you're adding objects, you can just hit a button and it will add to your selection like the object that you added previously. And if you keep hitting that button, it will just go back in history and add more and more of your recently added objects to your selection. So you can just cycle through them or collect them all together. All right. How does that look? Some of these things you have to play them to sort of decide, okay, is this working visually or not? And you don't want to put all the same. Like currently I just have the two plants, or the one plant with its variant. I don't want to put it everywhere, so that in every grassy area there is one. So let's not put that plant everywhere. Repetitive. And it can make sense to establish some rules for your fictional plants as well, so that like the red ones only grow on flat terrain, or it only grows in like more shady places or something like that. I don't have that many, so I don't really have the luxury of getting to do that yet, but it might make sense for me to do that as well. I'm gonna bury these a little further down because they were so big and kind of silly when they don't have any collision. So let's just put them in a slight hole, and we can perhaps just ever so slightly even this out. Something like that. All right. Okay. Yeah, this is starting to look kind of nice. I think I want grass here. Like here's a road, or it's kind of a road. If you drive down into this one, you can then come up over here. So we don't want to put a lot of grass probably here, but so yeah, like numerous improvements I should make to this foliage painting tool or decoration painting tool. It was actually used to be called the foliage painting tools, but I changed it to decoration. It's really not the best. It's really not the best, and it has some annoyances. But it kind of gets the work done. Like here, for example, I don't want to scale down those rocks, but I should have an option there that only scale down objects on the active layer or something, because currently I can't limit it to that. Okay, and do we want to actually just add a hint of something here to this to make the grass slightly less uniformly green? We don't necessarily need to use mud. We can just use one of these. It's like dead grass, for example. Except I think dead grass is revealed when we actually remove some of these other ones. Because the terrain layers are sort of applied on top of each other and in this very order. So I think dead grass is pretty much everywhere, and then you have the other ones stacked on top of it. Something like that. You can make it sort of. Sometimes it's almost like it looks too bright or lit, and then you just color the terrain a little bit somehow, and it just works much better. We can do perhaps the same thing here. Yeah, I don't know. But yes, I am very, very jealous of the beautiful grass that people seem to just get for free in the third-party engines. It looks much better than this. But you can't have everything. I have many things that I like better than what those engines would give me. Grass is not one of them. But it looks alright. It looks alright. Alright, so let's move on to this area now. And I think that looks good enough for now, at least. So let's start plonking down. Like you can just paint by holding down this button like this. I don't use that all that much. Sometimes I kind of like this single placement tool quite a bit. And here, for example, you have these rocks here. Then maybe the grass should sort of extend out towards them, kind of like that. But then don't actually come much further. Here we have other objects, so let's put grass next to them. I think that will look kind of nice. It should look kind of nice. And even with this arguably not that great looking grass. Some areas they just sort of come alive in a completely unexpected way when you add grass to them. Just the fact that like the earth, the ground tends to get a sort of certain softness to it when you have foliage and grass. Yeah, add some like small things like this that just sort of extend out from the grass. It tends to look pretty good, and then we can add one of these number 3s there with their tall, these sort of very high high grass blades at the end, and you get this kind of interesting silhouette. I think we can do maybe a number 2 like this, and then again we paint almost like a path through them, but with maybe it goes out to this one here, something like that. Yeah. Okay, and then I think I'm gonna want to scale it up just a little bit, here. So something like this maybe, and then similarly scale down these without affecting those rocks. I think we've added so much grass here that we're gonna have to tweak the terrain a little bit to actually make it look nice. But so what should we do? Okay, so first order of business is always to add some rocks, and those, as we discussed, they go on the ground decoration layer, and you can just fool around with them a little bit. Yeah, that looks fine, and let's add some more. There's like an opening here in the grass here. Let's put some rocks there. That's good. Okay, I'm gonna have to actually activate this now, so that now I can only select the rocks, and that's better. Maybe we can rotate them a little bit. Like, you do end up with like thousands and thousands of game objects in the editor when you have the system working like this. We're actually placing like game objects, but I like the fact that you have all the normal transform tools available to you. Something like that. Yeah, these two rock collections look kind of similar, but they're not actually the same mesh. They're both 4 rocks in roughly the same configuration, like this. Maybe we'll do a bit more, and then this is important to paint. I want some mud here, I think, next to that, and like. Again, like I mentioned previously, like, you can consider how the water would be sort of flowing down, and maybe the water sort of comes down here, like that. And you can even, well, that's a bit heavy. You can even lower the ground just a smidge. Make it a little more interesting. So, And this looks very, very sort of single colored now. So what do we do about that then? How about this dry grass? That will give it a little bit of. It's not. It doesn't give me quite the effect I'm going for. So maybe we'll deaden some of it. Yeah, dead grass is of course just the name that I came up with, and I'm not sure if the texture that's used is actually even dead. Something like this. And then maybe just we have some mud here already, so just make it slightly muddier. Like, yeah, that's starting to look like something. It's starting to look like something. It could be a place in the world somewhere. This is kind of boring. Let's put some rocks there. We're already on the ground decoration layer, so yeah. How about that? How about that? And then sort of regularly go through these, especially the sort of outskirts and everything. Make sure that they don't intersect too much. Like this is a little silly, perhaps. And if you can't make it fit with the terrain, then typically scaling them down makes it easier to do so. Something like that, maybe. We have a little bit of flying grass. Again, scaling down. That looks better. Yeah. I mean, doesn't this already look more like a living place? I think so, at least. We don't need to make everything dead. That's fine. Okay, and then in this place we could perhaps add a few plants. So let's put like a fern somewhere. I think I want the foliage layer first of all, and we can put a fern. Yeah, that's a fern. That's a fern. And then maybe no, that's a big fern. That's way too big of a fern. No. And then one of these guys there, and another one there, and I'll put some blue ones. Let's put one blue one there. Yeah. That looks like a place. Let's do something with this area as well. Let's put a fern there, and then we'll add some rocks next to it. Something like that. Yeah, that looks like a thing. Okay. So something like this. This is a pretty good sort of example, actually, of the whole visual look, and also playing to my technical limitations with this grass. Like you want to just sort of decorate these the periphery like this of the area. quite often it's these places where like the player can drive here, like nothing here currently has collision. I think this one does, and then the trees do, and this big boulder does. But the player can drive here, and that's fine. But typically they wouldn't. They would drive on the road, or they would perhaps drive here. So just leave those places mostly free of grass and foliage. Because again, if you look at this texture, like yeah, that's grass, all right. So let's allow it to be grass, but then have these be like these places with a bit taller grass. I think this place here requires a number 3, big enough number 3. There we go. Yeah. Yep, that works. And maybe actually in this very spot we should try to cover this area a little bit so that it does look like the grass is sort of up against the rock a little more than it currently is. Something like that, maybe. Yeah, that looks better. Okay. So we should do something on the other side as well. We have grass over there, that's fine, but we should have something probably here, maybe next to this tree, and stretching sort of out into this place, I think. So what do we go with? I think we're gonna go with the classical setup here as well. And whoop. You can of course just scale down those, but quite often it's just easier to undo and redo your painting. Something like that. Should it extend maybe a bit further to this side? Maybe it should. Maybe it should even have just a few tufts on that side as well. Not too much. Something like that, maybe. Yeah, this looks like it's gonna work, I think. And well, actually, again, we'll have one of these sort of almost like arms extending from this larger body of grass just towards these rocks. Quite often in real life, where there is rocks, there's like some kind of collection of water, which tends to mean that grass at least tries to grow there. Sometimes unsuccessfully, and then it gets brown. At least that's how I tend to think about it. Something like that. Let's not bring it too high up, I think. Or shall we? Should we do something here? Probably. Well, let's have that as a separate thing. I think this body of grass here is quite big already. So let's do like plump, 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 plump. Like that. Maybe a few of those, like so. This looks like a place for a rock. So let's put a rock there. Should we do a grassy rock? Probably Probably it should be a grassy rock. And how should it be turned? Maybe we should just turn it upside down. Like that, maybe. Maybe, and then ever so slightly dig a hole. Slightly too big. And then we just... What do we have? Oh, we have grass. Let's put... not gravel. Actually, yeah, why not gravel, actually. Let's gravel it up a little bit. Except in this case, we'll just... we don't... Yeah. We don't want this to be grassy if we gravel this area up. So what we can do is we take this guy, we copy the transform, and then we delete it, and then we put another one down. Oh. Small rock collection, like so, and then we paste the transform back in, and then we get the same thing. Why didn't this work? It should work. Yeah, I don't know. It must have mispressed somehow. Yeah, that should work. That should work, and then we probably shouldn't bring the gravel too far into the... No, not the gravel. Mud. Mud is what I want. We shouldn't bring the gravel too far into the grassy area. That doesn't tend to look all that good. That looks alright. That looks alright. Not great, not terrible, as they say. Right, should we do something about this area, maybe? Maybe add some more. Maybe add some more rocks here. That could look interesting if I can select them. Large when actually painting them with the decoration painting tool. So that's a bit silly. Maybe I should sort of tone it down a little bit, but we'll see. I don't know. Something like that, maybe. And we can, of course, even move this tree a little bit if we want to. A bit more angle to the layer. I don't know. Does that look good? I don't know. Does it matter? I don't know. Probably not. Yeah. So let's go back to foliage and work a little bit on this area here, on this tuft. Let's bring that down a little bit. We need to add some number 3s here, as we do in every place we do. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that works. Yeah, maybe let's be careful about those rocks. We don't want to scale them down. Yeah, again, I should just put in a option to not scale down something that's not on the active layer. And here I think we have the same thing as we had with this rock here. We need to actually make the grass cover this area if we want it to look more realistic. And this, like this, looks a little too abrupt. So these final few tufts make it look a bit more natural. Yes. Try to just move these out of the way. I would be very interested in knowing if things like this actually is of, shall we say, real world use to anyone. Like the last level design video I did got some very positive feedback, but I'm curious if you just like watching me doing this, or if you actually learn things from this that you can then apply in your own work or hobbies or whatever. So do let me know if this is actually, even though I'm using tech that's not, at least not yet, publicly available. I think some of these things are probably applicable regardless of technologies. But compared to something like a Unity tutorial video, I do realize that this is perhaps not what people are typically looking for on YouTube. So let me know if this is actually of use to you, and if you want me to cover any other specific topics to that end. Okay. How does this area look? It's starting to look more like an actual area. Now we can see that the silhouette of this is kind of boring and flat, and that's where these number 3s come in, especially if they're slightly bigger. I should perhaps make them so that they always turn out pretty big. There we had a small one, but here's a big one. Now we get these like really tall occasional tufts. They tend to be pretty important to making it look realistic, and also just you have a few of those that just look completely different from the rest of them. That can be pretty important as well. Yeah, I think that probably works. Since this is sort of a junction area with and it's on the critical path, we'll probably want to decorate this like quite sort of well and thoroughly. Not necessarily very densely, but at least sort of consider it pretty thoroughly. So I think we'll want something on this side as well. And this is actually there's like the optimal place for grass decorations, because no one's going to want to drive on these parts of the level, but everyone is going to see it. So what do we do? I think this is probably a very good place for some grass, or maybe not, we'll see. It can be perhaps a little tricky to get it to look good, but we'll try. We'll try anyway. What? Which layer do we have selected? Probably the ground decoration layer. Okay, so scale that up a little bit. And now it just looks bad. So what do? Let's place some smaller ones at the edges. We can scale them down. Oh, we need to actually move that in local space. Yeah. This even looks quite all right from this angle. Then I think we'll need some more rocks here, and maybe we'll do without the grass, like so. And let's move this in world space. There's a flying rock over there. That's not what we want. That is not what we want. Alright, but now we have grass growing through that rock. I mean, this is hardly important in the grand scheme of things. But in the small scheme of things, it's very important. Yep. Okay, should we do some grassy ones here and see if we can fit them in? We have like grass going through them. That can be a bit tricky to actually. We can get rid of the rocks instead. And this is perhaps a slightly tricky place to have grass. Let's try something like this. Get rid of enough of it, and then here we can scale these things up. Even if they don't have collisions, it's not really gonna matter. Can put these rocks there. They're sort of in between that rock and the ground. That's fine. Maybe even something like that, and then put some more there. Try to make them look like they're just lying there, and that looks perhaps more interesting. And then we have this grass tuft. I'll try to fit them in between the rocks. Like so. All right. Yeah, and maybe like a fern or two would be in order. Go crazy and put in a couple of them. What would be the good color scheme here to use? I don't know. I mean, that is a huge fern compared to like a person, which I'm completely okay with, but it might perhaps looks a little silly. Okay, what about these number 3s that I've talked so fondly about? Put in a few of them there. It doesn't need to be that big. This is not place I'm particularly happy with. Like compared to this, for example, I think this turned out quite alright, but this, yeah, it's tricky. I was so excited, but it turned out to be kind of a tricky place to properly decorate. Can't be helped. Yeah, so here we have this thing that I spoke of, where you have flying grass, and then you just scale it down. Maybe you'll push it down a little bit, and yeah, same thing with this. Same thing with that. Yeah. Something smaller. Come on, give me something smaller. There we go. Actually, that was all right, but so there we go. Yeah, maybe we don't spend too much time on this particular place. And that's sort of like a weird chunk of rock, almost as if it was like hewn out of a bigger piece or something. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not very happy with this, but it can be helped. I just have a slightly easier version of a rock collection here to just put down, and yeah, that's fine. That's fine. You can see that the decorations coming in there. Let's put down one more fern here, like plonk. As you come driving down this road, you can see them coming in. Ferns actually come in before the rocks. So that's fine. Okay. So I think I'm gonna end the video soon, but let's just finish up with this area here, and we'll have like completed essentially this area. I might want to put in some more grass over here, but we have like the critical path essentially done, and that's pretty nice. So I think I'm gonna do like not that much, but a little bit over here, and just a tiny amount over here. So let's start with the tiny amount, sort of tying perhaps these areas together. Might make it look a bit better. That place as well. Want a slightly larger one of those. Maybe another one there. And just one or two of these different colored ones, and then we'll scale this side down. This doesn't look very natural. I'm gonna have to continue it at least a little bit upwards. And that's probably not a problem. And that looks all right. I think we do need to vary the terrain color a little bit. So my go-to solution is always to do a little bit of mud near any nearby rocks. And maybe we can even do a little bit down there, and I think that already helps. It's very sort of difficult sometimes, at least for someone like me who's not like actually trained in these things, to make something that looks natural. You just sort of know it, and you also know when it doesn't look good, and then you're like, oh well, what do I do now to make it look good? And sometimes it's super tricky, and you just have to mess around until you find something that makes it look more natural. That can be kind of frustrating, but it can also be very fun. It goes both ways. I might have mentioned this in a previous video, but it's like one of the easiest things to do is put some rocks there and then lower the ground around them just a tiny amount. That can make wonders to a place. It's one of these things where your brain is. Of course, it looks like that. But now that I look at this, it's like, yeah, I don't like that, because now we have these decorations, i.e. the grass and the rocks right in the place where the player is going to drive, and yeah, that just doesn't work. It doesn't look like a place you should drive. This road up there should be very inviting. Should be very inviting to you. So let's do that, and let's instead just actually up the gravelness of the thing a little bit, and we can play around with the mud a little bit here and try to add some like directionality to it. We have some of these placed tire tracks here. Maybe we should have one that goes that way. But yeah, this looks all right. Looks all right, I think. So let's leave it at that, and I think I'm immediately seeing an opportunity here to just color this a bit more. Just like single colored big grassy fields. It's like there's nothing more boring, unnatural looking than those. Let's put in some dirt and mud and crap. Alright, and then, like I mentioned, just a little bit of grass over here. Not too much, not too little. And again, make it sort of reach the rocks enough, shall we say. This now looks like it's just mechanically filling this area. So let's not have that. Let's have this. Yeah, that looks more natural immediately. Yep. Yep. I like this. I don't know why, but I like it. Like I said, it's sometimes weird and difficult to say why you like something and why you don't. Yeah. That looks all right. We can just scale these up a little bit and scale these down a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Why not? And let's finish off the thing with some rocks here. Let's put them down a little bit. Yeah, they don't need to be very large. Just something to make your eyes rest on. And I hate this area immediately. But yeah, we can do something about that, and I'll keep working on this off camera as well. And of course, I have the whole rest of the level to go through still. So, but yes, this is sort of, kind of, the last major, if you want to call it major, thing, like visually missing from this level. So I should be finally allowed to move on to other levels after a while. Actually, I forgot one thing here. Let's just do one thing. I want like one plant there, and then we want, I think, a fern over there. Like this fern now looks a little lonely. I think. I don't think it looks very natural when it needs to be sitting next to something, and then just rotate it so that it doesn't clip with the terrain too badly. So upwards, and that's fine. And there we go. There's the fern. I mean, where there's one fern, there could be two. No flying ones though. Whoop. And no clipping through rocks, please. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so let's have a leisurely drive through what we just created and look at what it feels like. I'll just get rid of the debug things, and yeah, this of course looks terribly flat and uninteresting, even though we actually have quite a lot of rocks there. But now we're getting to the places. And it looks like a place. Now if we just toggle it on and off, it's not much, but it's kind of enough to just give it a whole different feeling. Yeah. Yeah. We added actually quite a lot of grass there. Maybe I need to add some more to some of these places, but it doesn't need to be completely even. Yeah. And maybe I could even develop some kind of automatic placement system for this to make it a little quicker for me to add these things. I mean, I'm doing it faster than I have today because I have explained these things to you, but it still takes quite a lot of time. Yeah, so like areas like this is, it almost looks unfinished now compared to our nicely decorated areas. Yeah, this looks like a video game. How about that? How about that? Cool. All right. I think that's enough for today. If you're still here, then thank you for your time, as always. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any feedback or questions, then do let me know. I have some more technical videos coming about occlusion culling, and I will get to that. I just haven't yet, and that's going to be very technical. So look forward to that if you're interested in that kind of thing, and do let me know if you want me to do more of these more sort of laid back design oriented videos as well. And with that, I thank you and see you in the next one. Bye.